Hello, podcast family, and welcome to Regulation Revolution, where we are igniting a revolution to help the world effectively manage and respond to their emotional experiences. It's not about what happens to us, but how we react that creates harmony or chaos in our lives. Emotional regulation is a complex process involving many factors. We offer this podcast to provide insight for you about how you fine-tune and powerfully decide to transform your complex emotional states into empowered instances of self-mastery, peace, and increased awareness. Instead of having your emotions control you, you can learn to have control over your emotions. The following program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. For more information, visit us at regulationrevolution.com. Welcome to today's episode of Regulation Revolution with your co-hosts Amy Reamer and Barry Vassar, Heart and Mind. Amy is a licensed therapist, professional speaker, and teacher. Barry is a pre-licensed therapist and practice manager at Heart and Mind. To find out more about Heart and Mind, please visit heartmindrba.com. Welcome once again, podcast family. This is Barry Vassar. I'm here with Amy Reamer. Thank you for joining us for Regulation Revolution. We've got a topic for you today. We're going to be referring to this as the tiger, and you've probably heard some of our other episodes as Amy's got our little tiger there on her wrist, ready to go. We all have a tiger. And I'm not talking what you have in your backyard. I'm talking what you have in your brain. Some people refer to it as the amygdala. That's our scientific name. It's also our fight or flight response. That's also where the limbic nervous system is. It's a part of every human being. Probably every animal too. Correct, Amy? Everybody has a tiger.
Well, mammals, yeah.
I've heard people refer to it as the lizard brain, which I don't know why, but it sounds good, or the primitive brain, or the barbarian brain. Just that sort of be thinking in those terms as we're talking, but for our purposes, we're going to be talking about the tiger. Amy, take the tiger away.
Yeah. So all of those AKAs that you gave for the tiger, the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system in the brain, the fight flight or system we talk about a lot, sympathetic nervous system, that pathway that happens. And so I use the tiger, and this came out of play therapy actually. Had a kiddo that was living in a kinship placement, living with I believe an aunt at the time, and talking about her behaviors and getting in trouble and not wanting to do it again and feeling bad. And they really, really mean it when they say they're not going to do it again. And then they would do it again. And so I'm sitting here going, well, I know why, but if I start talking about amygdalas and all this stuff, like I'm going to lose this like 10-year-old. And so animals became a really just good communication tool to represent different parts of the brain. And then in therapy, we can explore it. Now, in a therapy setting, my clients get to choose whatever they want. I say tiger is what I call it. You can choose what you want. And I've had dolphin, horse, lion, tornado, which was a fun one. And recently had a phone, which I thought was interesting. So I had them explain that to me. And what they talked about was too much information sort of overloads it. And so that's what we're thinking of is probably what shuts them down or what wakes their tiger up, or is when their phone gets too overloaded. And so
Okay.
again, it's all about when people start to understand what's going on in their body, this just gives us a great way to communicate about it.
Right.
It also makes for a great communication tool between parents and kids, between students and teachers, between couples and relationships, because it takes some of it's not personal. It's just, this is my tiger is, it's kind of like people talk about getting hangry, right? Like that's part of hangry is the tiger sort of waking up because of that hunger. So we're going to talk, and we've mentioned the tiger, I know, in our other episodes in general, but we're going to do sort of a deep dive into some of the parts of the tiger and how the tiger works and all that good stuff. So yeah, so I'm excited because I love my tigers. So as you can tell, I'm surrounded by them. That's Radar sitting back behind me. I've got a puppet. We use sand tray figures. I even have a winter hat that's a tiger, can put on my head. There's our fire tiger from Sand Tray and the ice tiger. So yeah, so and there's the mama tiger. And it's interesting in Sand Tray with those. I've got other ones too in different rooms with they're carrying the babies. It depends on how people perceive it. Like some of them perceive that as normal that a mother would carry a baby around its mouth. I've had one say they were eating it because their perception of what was going on wasn't about nurture. It was about aggression. So yeah, so we're going to talk more and learn more about our tiger today. So
I was talking with somebody about that, and I sort of did a correction with them that they shouldn't label it as a bad thing. This is part of your nervous system. And I was trying to use an example with them. I was like, just because the tiger is awake, it doesn't mean the tiger's on the lurch looking to attack. It just means it's on alert. Because I did work with some individuals and they understood this very well. And the one partner said, when my partner's tiger is out, my tiger comes out. And I'm like, what do you mean by out? And they said, well, like he's on alert. And I'm like, but he's not a threat. But it's funny, it kind of ties into that co-regulation or dysregulation, how one tiger triggers another tiger. But
oh yeah, because they talk
a bad thing.
Yeah.
It protects you.
Yes. Yeah, they talk to each other. So, and I know I may have mentioned this before, but just again, so people really get to know the tiger. Babies are born with a full-grown tiger. So that's their survival system. This is what makes them cry. Babies know, their system knows, it's wired that I can't get up and go get food. I have to depend on someone else to keep me alive. Since the tiger's main job is to help you survive. That's it. That's its main focus. It is very driven on that one goal, right? If tigers are nothing else, they are certainly not ADHD. They are they're very hyper focused. Maybe it's not a focused version, but they are very focused on that job of survival for their person. And so they're the ones who cry if a baby is hungry or is cold, where there's a little sign that, everything is not peachy keen in the world of this baby. And if you listen to our episodes about development and the baby in the womb, the mother's stress level, the environment that's happening around a baby is going to tune that tiger, in really tight or not. So a lot of that first year, of course, depends on how that tiger gets wired. But as far as its ability and its development itself, it's fully grown when they're born. And so this is why a child's tiger can tangle with an adult's tiger very quickly and easily, because it's fully grown. So it's not a problem. They don't have all the other skills. Their owl and their hippo aren't developed yet, but their tiger certainly is. So yeah, so that's the tiger's main job, is to keep it safe and help you survive.
And based on life experience, for some folks, that tiger still is untamed when they move into their teen years and into their adult. So depending on your development, maybe outside circumstances, maybe trauma, stressful household, domestic violence, I don't know, you pick something in there, that tiger never really learned that it could settle down. And so the tiger is always out. Everything is always a threat.
Yeah, it's very
complicated. Post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD.
Yep. And we'll talk about what happens when someone has a lot of stress or chronic neglect or trauma. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it was like an abuse situation. It could be medical trauma. things like that. Or it might just be that tiger is highly attuned to a certain thing. And so most of the time it goes along just fine, but then something is similar to what happened when they were a baby. Let's say they had to have a surgery or something like that. Then wham, the tiger's fully awake. And a lot of it's about the communication, because remember, and when we get into, we're going to do an episode on the owl and an episode on the hippo, but the owl is a baby owl when babies are born and it's growing. So you've got full grown tiger, baby owl, and then baby is growing and developing, but you still got a full grown tiger over here. So there's a lot talk about relationships, right? There's a lot of growth going on, and then they've got to figure out how to communicate all along the way.
I've got a lot of big feelings and not a lot of logic to figure them out.
Right. And not a lot of language. Yeah.
And it's funny because when I talk with parents about it, and I'm not saying that kids are trying to get one over on you, but you think about when a child is upset and their tiger is out, they're having an emotional response. And you look at a kid during that time and you look at them and you say, why did you do that? And they say, I don't know. And I believe they legitimately don't know. They can't find the words. It was probably just almost like a primal response. Why'd you hit Billy? I don't know. No, you know why you hit him. No, I really don't. He got on the swing and I wanted the swing. Yeah. And so it's funny.
Yeah. And there's, and the reason is probably in there. It's just they just want to communicate it, right? Like, so that's why we get frustrated, because we're like, well, you know why you did it. Well, they may know, but they may not be able to use their words to tell you.
Right.
And that's a big point about the tiger. The tiger doesn't really use words. It's all, like you said, it's all feelings. The tiger doesn't like words. It doesn't like questions. It doesn't process logic or problem solve. The only problem it wants to solve is something here doesn't feel right. I need to make it better. So that's why it goes down a fight path or it goes down a flight path to help you to feel better. One of the things I think that's really interesting that I find from folks about the tiger that they don't realize is that the tiger doesn't understand past and future. It only understands present. Yep, because if you were thinking about something that happened in your past, or you're worried about something coming up in your future, the tiger does not realize that you're just thinking about that, or it's a memory, or it's a worry about something coming up. You got a speech or something you got to do next week, and you're worried about that. All it knows is that you're feeling worried, or whatever you're feeling from whatever memory you have, whether that's scared or hurt or angry or whatever. And so all it knows is you're feeling that right now. It must be happening right now. That's a cue of danger. I need to step in. So I'll use that example. It's a pretty common one, right? A lot of people don't like public speaking and all of that. So if you're thinking about a speech or a presentation you have to give coming up, you might be feeling anxious. Well, the reason that you're feeling anxious, you're not in the middle of giving the speech, right? Why in the world would you be sitting in your chair and you're feeling anxious? Because tiger is feeling the anxious feelings. And so it's sending some signals back to your body that says, this isn't comfortable. This isn't right. You need to do something. And our vagus nerve is attached to our gut. And that's why you get butterflies in your stomach. Because it's a signal that says something's not right here. Let's move. Let's breathe. Let's do something because I'm not feeling good right now. So your tiger doesn't understand that. And that's why often we will react based on what happened in the past or what we were thinking about that might happen in the future.
So the reaction you could be having in the moment may not have anything to do with what's going on in this actual moment.
Oh, right.
So is that sort of akin to, or in some way related to the idea of, like, I've talked with couples that one or the other will say, I don't know why he or she just popped off at me or just, went off. I didn't even do anything wrong. All I did was walk in the room. Is that like an indicator of it must have been something at work today, something coming up tomorrow, argument with the kids from earlier?
Or it could be that person's own like sort of self-talk or perception of the situation, right? Gotcha. I know there's I think it was Brene Brown's Netflix special that I love, the story she tells about an interaction between her and her husband, where she sees this look on her husband's face. she immediately reads it as, oh, I'm getting older. I put on a little weight. I'm not as attractive anymore. And then what was actually going through his head was he was looking at the kids, and I don't remember the exact story, but they were like playing in a lake and there were some boats. And he was like, I'm getting older. If the kids have a emergency out in the water, am I going to be able to get to them? That's what he was going through his head. But that's why he had the look on his face, which was probably maybe a little worried, concern, like,
Right.
but both of them, their own thoughts about their own sort of aging, or how does their partner think about them, or am I going to be able to be a competent parent? There's all of that meaning making, which is what separates us from a lot of mammals out there, because our tigers can get set off by just the perceptions that are going on in her head of why someone's looking at us like that. Why did they
Right.
say something like that? What did they mean by that? And so as humans, our tigers are way more active. And whereas, like, so we want to talk about a real tiger out out in the jungle or wherever the tigers are at. They're going to feel hungry. They're going to go hunt. They're going to eat, and they're going to go take a nap. They're not worried about what the next tiger next to them is thinking about their hips. They're not worried about. They're not worried about their own hips, and they're not worried about their neighbor's hips. So
The tiger is not counting the calories.
this is what really separates the humans from the rest of the world, is we could think bad thoughts about ourselves.
Well, I use this example, and I've yet to run across somebody that could not understand it this way or identify it. You've experienced it, I've experienced it too. Talking about the nervous system, talking about the tiger. So parent tells the child, you need to clean up your room. Next day, parent comes home. You better clean up your room. They get in the squabble over cleaning up the room. Next day, parent comes home, starts with the threats. I'm going to take this away. I'm going to take this away. On day 4, the parent is driving home from work and is already in the fight with their child. They walk in, the room is spotless. What does the parent do? You forgot to take the trash. Did you do your homework yet? Why? Because your tiger has been out each day and the tiger is ready for a fight. And so even when they come in the room and it's like, did you clean? Yeah, I cleaned the room. Well, you forgot to take the trash because I'm still looking for a fight.
Yeah, they probably already had it built up in their head that I've got to, that they're not, it's not going to be clean today. And
right. That's
the tiger's been prepped.
Yeah, that's it. And so a lot of it is in our own head that wakes the tiger up. I think on a daily basis, I would honestly say I don't feel threatened by very much. I don't walk outside and I'm on high alert. But the tiger comes out when I start thinking about what tomorrow is going to look like or the next day. And so it's funny because you are right. I think a lot of times what's waking our tiger is not even something that's happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's the spouse looked at you wrong.
This is where the mindfulness movement has become powerful, is really because what it's doing is it's helping us to tune into the present moment. This is what grounding is about. If anybody's ever had anxiety attacks or panic and they've learned grounding techniques, this is why they work. This is honestly why I could be a therapist, is because I know the science. Because some of this stuff just on its surface sounds like, it's woo stuff, right? And so, and it's like, why in the world would I do that? But it makes, when you know how the brain and the body is working, it makes more sense. So like there's a really popular coping strategy called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you do, 5 things I can see, 4 things I can feel, 3 things, whatever. You're doing the senses. All it really is doing is it's orienting you back to the present moment. And bringing, if your head goes, it's, my next kid's book, it's been rattling around in my head, is The Land of What Ifs. And how we go out to the land of what ifs, and then how do you get back to the land of now? And so what mindfulness does, what grounding does, is it gets you back to the land of now. And that helps the tiger to go, oh, that's not really a threat because it's not till next week. Or it's not actually happening now because, again, it doesn't really know future, but it goes, oh, and for the tiger, it just disappeared. If you come back into the present moment and you stop thinking about that presentation coming up next week, it just disappeared for the tiger, and it goes, oh, I can curl back up and go back to sleep.
I remember in law enforcement, and in other situations as well, because when the tiger is out, we'll get more into the hippo and the owl. Tiger's out, hippo goes under, owl flies off. So your logical brain is offline. That part is off. So I remember they would tell us in law enforcement, when somebody comes up to you in a panic, ask them their social security number, ask them their address, because so the person runs up, they went down the street and the car was down here and everything else. What's your social? What is your social? What does that have to do? What is your social? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what is your address? What is that? What is your address? And the whole time you're engaging, you're trying to bring that owl back.
Yeah, you're trying to talk to the owl. Now, sometimes, just depending on the situation, and I'm sure you encounter this, sometimes that's not going to work.
No,
because the tiger is out, and the tiger doesn't remember those things, can't access that information, and can get really frustrated. But if it's not fully out, if they're not the ones totally losing it, they're just a little panicked, then yes, it's kind of like throwing cold water on something, like it like what? It just shifts. It just shifts how you're thinking. When we worked in the 911 center, you get people calling you in a panic, and all you have is your voice over the phone to try to get them to calm down. Well, of course, our tiger is going to want us to get louder and louder. And like, we could always tell like a coworker over there's got a live one, because you can hear their voice and going up. Or you hear the ma'am, like trying to get their attention. But we often found that if we started actually talking lower, that they would finally like calm down, and because they're like, what? Well, I'm sorry, what did you say? It was the same like concept, right? Like trying to get them to do something opposite, but rather than our tiger coming and sort of meeting and running head first into their tiger, we're trying to like calm it down and bring it back down a notch so that we can get them the help that they need.
Well, for our listeners and viewers, what are some indicators, and I know everybody is different, that your tiger is out? What is it? I mean, is there something that because not everybody knows it. So is there certain things that are telltale signs that your tiger may be out?
Well, what you basically are going is your tiger typically is going to want you to either fight or to flee. So what does that look like? So maybe irritable, picking an argument, want to, so they're in the fight. That's the sort of the fight category. Want to go kick a tire, or again, you're feeling like you want to punch somebody or something, right? Like there's this fight piece. Anxiety can be a fight or a flight. It just sort of depends on what that looks like. And then also on the flight side, it could be wanting to walk away, right? I need to get out of here. I need to leave. If it's an environment that it's a constant problem, maybe, you want to leave that job. Maybe you want to leave that relationship. Like there's a, kind of get out of that. Now there's some nuances there around like the fire tiger and the ice tiger, what that looks like if you drop all the way down to dorsal. But it basically just, you're not feeling safe. You're not feeling like you want to connect to somebody. You either want to protect yourself from them or you want to get away from them. So I would say that's probably the simplest way to if I'm in a defensive protective mode, if I want to put the cannons up over the wall and start shooting, or I'm pulling we use a castle a lot. I always use a castle like for our own castle, what that looks like. We're pulling up the drawbridge, we're shutting down all the shutters, we're shutting everybody and everything out. That would be
one of the things that you helped me with, and I had this day some time ago, and I didn't recognize it as my tiger was out. It was a day in particular when I was in the office and there was a lot of stuff to get done and there was a lot of things coming at me and clients, and I was doing all that. And you had actually reached out to me at a particular point and you said, I can meet with you today between 2 and 4 or something to that effect. And I said, I think I responded with, nope, I'm going to the gym. I'll see you tomorrow. And you said to me that, go tame your tiger. That was your response. Do what you need to do to tame your tiger in a text message. Some people know it, some people don't. Amy Reamer also owns heart and mind therapy that I work for. It's heart and mind. So for me, it was, but I didn't recognize as my tiger was out. But I was doing what I need to do. I was like, I need to blow off this afternoon and just go to the gym, and then I can come back. And I came back, and I think I worked until 8 or 9 that night. But I needed just to get away for those 2 hours. So that was my tiger saying, we need to fly. We need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was some, or you get some of that fight energy or flight energy. Running on a treadmill is going to handle flight energy, right? Because the body's going to feel like it's getting to run and getting to move. Movement is really helpful when we're in that space. And I think we have a nice new title for another episode, actually, out of what you just talked about. Is boundaries and how boundaries are helpful or hurtful with our regulation. Right. So what you did was you set a boundary that was, okay, yeah, I know Amy needs to talk to me, but it's not really an emergency and I need to go to the gym. And so you set your own, boundary for yourself and your own regulation. Right. So, I don't want to get off topic, but this is what happens for us, right? We talk about stuff and we're like, oh, there's a cool title. We can talk about that for another hour. So I want to come back to the tiger a little bit to talk about what happens to a tiger that does experience a lot of cues of danger when we're young and throughout sort of that complex piece of, so if someone has chronic stress, if they have there's, the home has violence in it, those kinds of things. And it doesn't always have to be that negative or that chronic. But what happens is that you get a tiger that is now a very light sleeper. And because our tiger is also our radar, there's what's Dr. Porges calls neuroception, right? And that's why this tiger that's here over my shoulder, his name is Radar. And so because the tiger is a radar that's always sort of watching for cues of safety, cues of danger, cues of safety, cues of danger. And then when it has something that's like new, it has to examine it because it doesn't know. Is this a cue of safety or is this a cue of danger? It's brand new. I don't know what this smell is. I don't know who this person is. I don't know what this environment is. And so it's examining that, and then it's going to put it in one category or another: safe, not safe, safe, not safe. If you have a tiger that is now a very light sleeper, and it's has a very sensitive radar, it might not even take much time. It's just going to put everything into the not safe category. Well, let's just, everything is so crazy. Everything is so stressful. There's so many cues of danger all the time anyway. I'm not going to try and figure this one out. I'm just going to put everything into the not safe category. So like for kids who have had like some kind of abuse and they have not been treated well, not been protected well by adults, all adults are now not safe. So you could be foster parent of the year, you could be counselor of the year, you could be teacher of the year, and that kid is not necessarily going to see you that way because their tiger has said all adults are really idiots. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't know how to keep kids safe. They don't know how to run things. I've got to take care of myself. And they get a very self-reliant tiger that's very, might a blank face or like a concentrating face might be read as angry to them because the tiger again is like watching out for. So, well, I don't know what that face means, but I'll just go ahead and put that in the not safe category. That must mean angry or something bad's going to happen.
So would you say that comes from, I'm sure there's many avenues, but would that come from primarily repetitive experience or overstimulation? So for instance, I've only had experience as a child with mom, dad, and one uncle, and none of this has felt safe. So I've had repetitive experience. Therefore, I lump all adults into this category. Or it is because I have so much around me coming at me so many different times, so many different ways, that it's much easier for my brain to just say, all of this is dangerous.
Yeah. And so we talk about a window of tolerance, right? Like how much can we manage before we go sort of outside of what feels safe? Right. But that's different for everybody. So if someone had a lot of trauma, there was a lot of violence around them, they just didn't have any much opportunity to feel safe. So their window of tolerance is very small. It could be how they're wired. So for someone with autism or someone with sensory processing issues, then their environment is sending these cues sometimes of not feeling safer in their world. And
Gotcha.
so their window of tolerance might be really small. So when you talk about being overwhelmed, what you mean is whatever the stimulus is, it's taking me outside of that window. It's bigger than what I can manage right now. So yes, a cue of safety or a cue of danger isn't the same thing for everybody. And this doesn't necessarily mean a cue of danger is someone's being robbed, right? Like that's a pretty common one. It could just be someone talked way too loud, or there's a hand dryer in this bathroom that sets my system off.
Mhm.
They have a tolerance for that frequency of sound. They have hyperacusis, which is the highly attuned to sound, and so they can only manage but so much sound. And their tiger gets set off by it. And so, since our tiger can be set off by so many different things, that's what can be really, really hard for a lot of us to. But behavior will look similar because it'll be a fight or a flight response. So that fight flight response isn't necessarily always to the same kinds of cues. And so I think as a society, we've lumped all of that under the heading of behavior, or maladaptive behavior. It's not maladaptive. It works for them because if they want to get away from you, if they want to stop whatever it is that's bothering them, running out of that bathroom worked. They got away from that hand dryer, or if, that kid took their swing from them and they hit them and they went crying to their mama, I got the swing back. And that's the tiger feeling better because it was able to, hold on to something or whatever that feeling was. So it's a radar that's now a little faulty in how it's reading things and how it's categorizing things. It's extremely sensitive. So I call that a light sleeper. And I call her my first tiger tamer because it was a teenager I was working with at the time. I had her draw a picture of her tiger awake and a picture of her tiger asleep and what that looks like. And the awake tiger, she put bags under its eyes. And she said, it's awake all the time. So when we have a nervous system that's been stuck in sympathetic, tiger's awake a lot. That takes a lot of energy. I mean, think about that. I mean, these are why a lot of those big predator animals out in the wild sleep so much.
Right.
They're in fight mode to go eat and get their food, and they expend a ton of energy. Look at those cheetahs, that run 55 miles an hour, but not for very long, because the body has to recuperate. Well, as adults or as humans, we don't always recuperate really well. We stay stuck sometimes in that fight flight. We don't get that energy out. We don't get back up to the top of the ladder using that language.
The other part of the tiger, I don't want to take you off track with anything, but we talked about the freeze. We talked about the frozen tiger too. Does that come about? I think I've used an example of folks before, like a literal fight or flight. I'm saying if you picture a boxer in a fight, eventually the arms get tired and they're going to drop. Move down that ladder, it's dorsal. If you're in flight, just think running. Particular point, your legs get tired. Does that lend itself to the freeze tiger, or
I started using ice tiger to describe dorsal vagal, which is actually part of our parasympathetic. It's actually different. Some people use different animals. But for me, I've used the ice tiger to describe that because it's really like you said, it's what happens when you're fighting or you're fleeing. You still can do something. You are still motivated that I can fix this, I can change this, I can get away from this. This is why I think people who have a lot of arguing conflict, right? You have two tigers that are trying to make this work, they're trying to fix it. And so because they're motivated, because this is worth something to me, this is valuable to me, I want to fix this. What happens when we drop into that parasympathetic dorsal state, what's happened is we don't feel like we can anymore. We either have given up, it's hopeless, or we have had experiences that if I fight back, if I do try to fix this, bad things happen. So, like if you think about a child, maybe they mouth off to a parent, they get, hit across the face. Well, the tiger has now learned, don't fight back because you will get hurt worse. And so then they drop more into the dorsal state, and that's the ice tiger. That's the parasympathetic, that's the giving up. So if we think about bunny rabbits, if a bunny rabbit starts getting chased by a dog, and I've seen this recently because we're working with a trainer right now, their dog's chasing the cats. And so at first the cat fights back, is hissing and clawing. And well, first it tries to run, because if an animal can run, it's going to be better off to flee, right? Especially if you've got a much bigger animal, like a dog chasing a rabbit, or poor dogs. I'm giving them a bad rap today. Dogs chasing cats, fox chasing a rabbit or whatever, right? It's going to flight is it where its confidence lies, right? I can get away. But let's say they get into a corner, or they get caught by this bigger, larger animal, and fleeing isn't an option anymore. So now they might fight. They might scratch and bite and kick or whatever. But if the body, this is a decision made by the nervous system, okay? This is not us consciously choosing which way. Right. This is your nervous system choosing. This is your tiger choosing. If the tiger says, okay, you've been caught, so flee didn't work. You're much smaller than this animal. It's got bigger jaws and teeth than you do. Fighting's not going to work. Play dead. And that's what ice tiger is. And you see this is Robin Goebel uses the possum, which is a great example of what parasympathetic dorsal is the possum. I've used a turtle before. When we tuck in, you could use a sloth, right? Slows down. But that's, for me, the reason that I used other animals, I came back to the tiger, because it's even though technically it's not the sympathetic system, it's a result of what's going on for our tiger, if it feels like it can be successful or not in navigating this situation. And so they'll drop down and play dead, and then when the threat is gone, whoop, they pop up and run off once the threat has passed.
Well, I know in talking with couples and also with parents and their children, I tell them that having that tiger out is not a bad thing, because as long as you're doing something, you're mobilized, you're still in fight or flight, there's still an investment. It's when your partner doesn't want to argue with you that they're no longer invested. That's when they've and I will have parents all the time say something about their kids, like, he's doing so much better now. He just comes in the door and goes on upstairs and does his homework. No argument, no fussing. You've done great work with him. And I'm like, I'm sorry, he's shut down. He's no longer caring. So for our listeners and viewers out there, as long as your spouse is willing to argue with you, there's still some hope in this. There's still some fight in this game.
Yeah. One of the points I want to make before we start wrapping up is, we've talked about how the language of the tiger is safety. But it also is very nonverbal. Like I said, the owl is the one that holds our words, a tiger doesn't. And the problem we have often is when people's tiger wake up, like you said, with their child or our spouse or whatever, either our tiger wakes up or our owl is trying to logic and reason it away. And the problem is it's like speaking two languages, so you might as well be speaking Swahili and they're speaking French. And I don't know if they're related or not, but like they're not going to necessarily understand you very well, because it is like you're speaking two different languages when you're coming at it with a grown owl and they're fully in their tiger mode. And some people will sort of camp into their owl for their own safety. They'll try to logic everything away and reason everything away because they're scared of their tiger. Because they've had trouble controlling it. They've gone in that sort of chaos route. And so oftentimes, especially as adults, because we have a lot more years, right, of emotional experiences, or building our own thoughts about ourselves and others and perceptions. And so often, we will put meaning to that. And so understanding that nonverbal, and I know we have a little, if you're on YouTube watching this, we have a little clip on YouTube, using a clip from Inside Out, and how sadness helps Bing Bong by simply being there and making statements, not asking questions. Because when we ask a bunch of questions when the tiger is out, it gets confused and angry and upset. Like, have you ever done that? Like, I mean, would you walk up to your spouse who's you just are having an argument and you're like, well, what do you want for dinner? Nobody wants to, like, nobody's going to answer that question. Like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Ask in the middle of this argument, or when it's like, what do you even care what I'm angry about? Like if they're asking, what are you angry about? The best metaphor I have, and I may have used it in here on another episode, but is if someone is drowning, you don't take that time to ask them a bunch of questions or teach them how to swim when they're drowning. You simply save them. And then later, you may have a conversation about them swimming without an adult or giving them lessons to make sure they know how to swim or whatever. So when someone's tiger is fully out, they're basically kind of drowning in those feelings and those emotions and those feelings of not being safe, whether that's physically safe or emotionally safe. And I think that's a really important point here with the tiger, because when we use the word safe, oftentimes people think about physical safety.
Right.
Not always the case here, because we are social beings and we rely on each other. Humans would not have survived as long as we have if we didn't survive with each other, if we were all loners. They were hunters, gatherers. And so that safe social piece is really important to our survival. So if we're feeling rejected, if we're feeling, not liked, if we're not accepted, to a human being, that is the equivalent of being hungry or hurt physically, or being in danger. Especially if you're a middle school kid, right? Like, I mean, think about that, right? Like that's such a huge piece for our kids when they're growing up and they're going outside of their families and getting their peer groups and their families and all of, their new friends. So, the tiger, all feelings, safety, nonverbal, and it's a full grown tiger from the time we're born. So, I always tell parents when we talk about co-regulation, our tigers can teach our kids, and you can use this in any example with couples or whatever. Our tiger can teach the other person's tiger to roar or to purr. And so which way do you want to go?
I like that. Do you feel like there is so much to this topic. I mean, I feel like we just kind of, all of this, folks, and this was just like going over the surface.
Yeah, it definitely. But yeah, and there's, and just speaking to that piece, I'll emphasize this too, when you're talking about the tiger is not a bad thing. It is really about how we feel safe. So if you're playing a game, if you're playing a sport, you're out working in your garden, like you're expending energy and you're fixing something to make something better for your life, you are using your sympathetic system, right? But you're in a good, safe place. Even in a sport, even in football, like they can tackle each other and then get up and hug each other, like right after they, knock their clock off.
Right.
But then occasionally you've seen, like, think about hockey. Like occasionally you've seen, now it goes into a full-on brawl, whereas the last time they got, checked into the wall, they didn't get into a big fight. Mm-hmm. The difference is how it laid on that tiger. Was this fun and exciting and energetic in my sympathetic system, or was this a threat? And was this dangerous? And so a lot of times, I mean, I'm a sports person, so a lot of times you'll notice in sports, if one team is really far down and they're really struggling, you see a lot more of that start coming out. And it's probably because of their feeling like, I suck at this, we're going to lose. I wanted to be the champions. There's no way we're going to be the champions. What does that mean? My parents are going to yell at me, like the coach is going to yell at me, like all of that stuff's going through their head as that score is tanking. They're losing their regulation. So it's gone from just fun, sympathetic tiger energy to it's not safe here anymore, tiger energy.
Well, that's a interesting note that I want to hit on a little bit is for folks not to project their tiger, because you hit on something very important there. Because the idea is your tiger might see a roller coaster as a threat, mine sees it as a thrill. So I feel safe. I feel good. My tiger is out. My hands are up, and I'm having fun. And the other person, no, there's no way I'm getting all that. It's a danger. So it's no cookie cutter rule
Right.
that says
It's all about our own nervous system's perception, which is a lot based on our window of tolerance, a lot how our neurodiversity of our wiring is in our brains and our bodies, all about our memories. I love what you just said, and I'm gonna use that one now, Barry. If whether it's a threat or a thrill, I love that. Right? Like
right.
that makes such sense. It's does the tiger read it as a threat or does the tiger read it as a thrill?
There's our sound bite for the week.
Sound bite. There's my little clip for the week.
Well, I encourage our listeners and viewers to look at two characters. Now, I can't get into all the details on them for today, but look at Rocky Balboa and look at the Incredible Hulk. If you want to see the tiger, what the tiger unbridled looks like, think of the Hulk. But one of the interesting psychological studies of our fictional Rocky Balboa is that it's not until he's beat half to death that his tiger comes out and he rallies in that 15th round. So he goes 15 rounds of getting beat, and then it's like, okay, I feel like we're going to die now. And then he pours it on. But you see that in all of the movies, it's that surge that he gets. And that is his fight or flight.
Yeah.
And his fight. And for Hulk,
I would imagine it's also a part of, with movies, why we enjoy like those underdog, those comeback from behinds. Even the movies that have a lot of violence. I mean, think about like the John Wicks, right? Like they were talking yesterday. Someone did a count of like 136 kills or something in the latest John Wick movie, right? There's a way that our fight system, our tiger, can get some like feeling, like either through sports or through watching these, action, violent kind of movies, where we can get this release of this fight part of our tiger side without actually getting the consequences of going to jail and getting in trouble for it.
Right.
But our owl is the one that keeps us from doing that, right? It puts a brake on that, and it helps us to recognize if we keep going, we go too far. Like that's why roller coasters are popular, because there's the thrill without, that much threat, with it for the most part. But like you said, there's some people who enjoy that. Some people, it's too much. It's outside of their window of tolerance. Whenever I love roller coasters, but when I've been on one that's really, rocking my world, I will literally in there start chanting to myself, it's almost over. It's almost over. It's going to be, it's, like, because most roller coasters are like 45 seconds, a minute and a half, lucky, right? Like, so it's like, I can last 30 more seconds. I can last 30 more seconds, right? Because again, the tiger is in that present moment of, oh my God, I'm going to die. We're barely, down this hill at, 80 miles an hour. But we're if we're in a place of that safety, that means the owl is still sort of like, yeah, but it's a roller coaster. You're strapped in and there's safety checks and it's going to be over in 30 seconds. All of that's happening, in our brains so lickety split fast below our conscious level of perception. And so sometimes we're able to talk ourselves into something. Sometimes we're able to talk ourselves out of something, and sometimes we're not. All depends a lot on that, the inner workings and the communication and regulation. What we talked about before, regulation is really truly how your owl, your tiger, and your hippo communicate and work well together. It's like a well-oiled machine going on in there. That's truly what good regulation is.
I do want to let our folks know as we get ready to wrap up that you will be hearing about the tiger more, because it'll always be playing a part when we talk about the hippo, when we talk about the owl, with the prefrontal, the hippocampus. When we're talking about those parts, those tigers can come back up. But I also want to remind folks, check us out on Facebook, our Facebook page, Regulation Revolution website. You can sign up for newsletters there. You can sign up for our latest podcast episodes. So follow us there. And Amy, we're going to go with hippo next, we think.
Probably do owl next, because
Owl?
we've got tiger and owl covered, and then we can that's
Okay.
typically the order I might go in. But again, people can listen to in whatever order they want. But that might be our next one that gets released. Probably will be owl.
All right. All right. I guess that's it for this week, and we'll pick back up on another week.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Thank you again, Amy.
Following program includes stories and situations that are not intended to identify any client or individual. Any similarities are coincidental and should not be considered reflective of any one person or group of people. The preceding program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. If you or someone you know is in need of counseling services and reside in the Commonwealth of Virginia, please visit us at heartmindrva.com for more information.